I said earlier I don't like doing certain pieces, and that continues because tonight ends it one way or another. But these are a small sample of questions that need to be addressed by the trustee on their show. And there is a number of others, but I've kept it down to a minimum. With veterans today claiming that it was Israel fired a nuclear weapon at Beirut and caused that blast, and Trump stating it was an attack also. If this is true, and the trustee claimed the trust held all the nuclear codes, the question I would like her to answer on their show is, for the sole purpose of clarity, nothing more, nothing less. 1. Is this statement made by veterans today and others correct? And if so, 2. Why didn't the trust block the firing of the said nuclear weapon? Next question. Again, for the sole purpose of clarity and for the benefit of the people, we are requesting much more details of the said app. Who is operating the server of the app? Who controls the data section? Who has access to the data section? Why is a tracing app required? And what or who is being traced and why? Next question. Is the Alpha and Omega system, which was a 1934 clown system, integrated or part of the quantum system? Final piece of the questions. With Q and Trump being connected, and both Kim and Tank stating they are in with Q and Trump, and given the Q people were supporting the takeover of the Fed by the Black Sun BlackRock group, which was stocked with $455 billion of American people's money, and then leveraged to the tune of $4.5 trillion, which now funds them for at least another year. The question is there a conflict of interest here between Lightforce, Trump, and the Q group? Why wasn't those funds blocked by the trust or taken back, given it was taken under illegal purposes and a misuse of government money? Bearing in mind, the government has no money, only the people's money. I would like those questions answered for the benefit of all people, not just me. Now, Kim, in an update report this week, tried to send money to JP Morgan. And that's at least the 4th time in the last 2 years with that particular bank that I remember. And sent $567 billion, which is on hold at the Treasury, and an $11.34 billion to an escrow account for the people, which predictably went sideways again. We have heard this same story dozens of times now for the past 2 years. And I'm not sure what value that approach brings other than to delay everything. And it's time for a more radical approach only you, the trustee, can action upon. The message to Kim is, it is way past time to sidestep these banks and use the radical approach that was discussed several times between us, first starting over 18 months ago. The people are already being affected now and have been for 5 to 6 months, and so that is no longer a reason to not do that process. You and we will wait forever waiting for the bank's approval. And Trump quite clearly has zero power to do anything that alters from the old system, as you stated. But yet again, you're missing the key component. You are the bank. And I'll repeat it again. You are the bank, not them. And you forget that. Please just do it. Next item. Kim mentioned golden parachute payments with each bank's CEO. And this has been tried before, which from my perspective, kind of disgusting given the harvesting those people have done. But she is the trustee, and she ultimately has to make those difficult decisions, and they are difficult decisions. And yes, they are requesting immunity, the bankers with a silent W. And many will not agree with that. Me personally, their immunity should be granted under specific conditions. They must reveal all of the skullduggery they have been involved in, naming all the names who are working with them, and work with a team inside the banks to clear out all the mess and rout out the whole network of deception. So you make the perpetrators clean up the swamp. And this can be applied to all other organisations as well. And so the loss of jobs, which is inevitable, can be transferred over to investigative work for cleaning the swamp that exists in all organisations. Full disclosure for full disclaimer, except where it involves criminality against children. Kim mentioned the Fed coin, and hopefully she blocks that completely out of the system, as it would be a disaster for humanity. Any crypto coin or blockchain nonsense is a disaster for the people. Period. Kim then came up with the next item, that the Black Sun had borrowed from the Black Rock, the new Fed, $768 billion, and the same amount from various mafia organisations around the world, on the condition it was all repaid on Tuesday by the now legendary Carrots for Jackasses called the RV. And it became clear they couldn't pay it back. No surprise there. And so now it appears that they are prime targets for the mafia ways of dealing with people who don't pay. So essentially what was said is all 35 million now are put on death watch. Now one hopes Kim, doesn't backtrack on that figure like she did in an earlier show. And curiously, the figure given at the time of the eliminated Black Sun by Kim to me, which I revealed in the show, was 768,000, which is exactly the same figure that they've borrowed from BlackRock. Coincidence? Kim mentioned about a favours scheme, and instead of we the people receiving funds, and we would receive favours in return, and mentioned tax credits and a potential for a meeting with Trump. Now, one hopes he doesn't let her down again for whatever reason, as there has been several attempts previously, 15 to 20 from my recollection. But the favours suggestion came from our THI business group, as Kim gleefully announced, and I'm pleased that they are providing good solutions for the greater good of all. You know, my time as liaison with Kim is over, but that doesn't stop others from having input. But one hopes Kim uses it for the right purposes and not continue to use it as a leverage to take jabs at me or THI within our own show, as evidenced by several of our members and also Tank members this week. So back to the favours issue. And I know some will see this as Kim potentially sliding away from the funding that was promised. I disagree. Because after 4 years of blocks, you can either carry on waiting or come up with alternatives. And if it comes to fruition, then it's a gain, not a loss. But people will always talk and go, she's sliding away from promises. But you have no idea the amount of work Kim has done, and also myself, to try to get that funding out. So if this works, fine. Then as for favours, my suggestion would be to request land, particularly off the BLM, to create TPC village projects in each state and or organic growing sections of land. Now, also as a favours suggestion, and one way to attract more followers to Lifeforce is to delete some or all credit card debt or loans by members of Lifeforce as part of a favours package. And this could be done after members have been with Lifeforce after a set period of time supporting the channel. Another would be mortgage issues, of which I will propose a full and detailed plan shortly. Now, Kim also mentioned about asking for a meeting at the UN, which I'll be delighted to see and hear, as it's something I've been requesting for a number of years now via the show and also to the council back in 2014. And it doesn't matter to me whether I'm involved or not personally. But given it was a request of mine, I would like some input into what is said and addressed to the UN should it take place. And this can easily be done through a third party. Next thing Kim mentioned is there is $130 million in an Israeli bank and stated as for PPEs, personal protection equipment for Israelis. I'm not being funny here, but are you taking the piss with that decision? $130 million sent to Israel when they just got $3.8 billion of the American people's money. Why do they need another 130 million of the people's money in the trust? Why are you sending funds to a terrorist state when a valid country next door called Lebanon is under serious humanitarian crisis and has far greater needs than just PPEs? And this smells off to me, and will add fuel to the fire of the people who accuse Trump and his connections of being Israel-based, not American. I'm speculating here, but maybe that was the real reason why I had to go. Who knows? I'm hoping not, but I find that an astounding and ridiculous action to undertake. Now, the money was sent to the Bank of Leumi, who is currently under criminal actions for tax evasion in the US by the US Justice Department. And that alone should have been a complete no-no of engaging with them to begin with. I know I have issues with Israel, but the world has issues with Israel, not just me. The Lebanese people have issues with Israel. So do the Palestinians, the Egyptians, the Yemens, and the Syrians, and every other country in that region. And I find it a kick in the teeth that you would send them 130 million allegedly for PPEs when they've just received $3.8 billion of American people's money. Final piece in this section. For 3.5 months now, I've mainly kept quiet at the request of a few people who have worked with Kim, who stated it was her issue to fix, not mine, and so I did. I was also told to take the higher ground by a friend. Again, which I did. And yet, curiously, the higher ground only applies to me and not the other party. As is often repeated in our time with THI, only me and THI are held accountable and requested to take the higher ground, and yet it is not replicated in any other group, who seem to say and do whatever they like with zero reciprocity. Why is that? Now I'm going to state on record, whatever happens in the future with Life Force and UNC, and I am hearing there's more than a few fractious antics ongoing there already. Personally, I hope it all takes off and achieves what it has set out to do. And you can quote me on that. It was a vision of mine back in 2014. Cosmic Voice members will remember me saying it. That someone would come along and run a valid news show and take on the corrupt mainstream media back then. But there is an added problem now, is because not only does it have to take on the mainstream media, it has to take on the alt media bullshittery factory that pervades all corners and in between. But you will not progress at the expense of all others, taking sly jabs at me and THI. Our members can see. Your opening show, T-7, and Tank was duping his people into thinking the funds were coming in 7 days. But actually, T-7 was them joking about my removal. The 7 minus Thomas is what it meant. All replete with dueling cats on the graphics. And just how is that a respectable news channel? Making several dated predictions, all of which has failed. Sensational headline-grabbing statements and promises that were proven wrong. Like the student loans deletion Kim claimed she had done, and even a member of your own team pulled you up live on air over that, is not the way forward, and it erodes confidence and credibility. But THI and all of our members laid all the groundwork for their venture. And many of our ideas are now being pushed forward in Life Force, which I'm pleased to see as they are valid ideas. But that work was done by the members needs to be recognised by Life Force, as it was our members who supported her through the last 4 years, financially and otherwise, and it's disingenuous to not recognise that fact. THI, in essence, was the vehicle to people knowing who Kim is in regards to the alt media. And her repaying of that is to try and divide and conquer our group into smaller fragments and harvest the people and their ideas for their cause. Tank and his followers have been doing that in the chat and the MeWe state groups for the last 2 years. Fact. Curiously, it all stopped when I cut the energy to it. And it should also be noted that the assemblies and natural or common law was all done by National Liberty Alliance at least 7 years prior. So between THI and the NLA, we have provided the framework for Life Force and the UNC assemblies. And a bit of recognition for all the people who have done that work over the past number of years should not be brushed aside like they never existed, or because they are connected to the new perceived enemy of the group. 2 years ago, it was Ava Cowan. Now it's me. Now, someone said, why don't Kim and I speak? And the reason is she stated in no uncertain terms that she never wanted to speak or be near me again ever on May the 11th. Long before the post attributed to Kim on Facebook in June and my reaction to it. 2 months on now, and the person with the machine who can map everyone and everything globally cannot find out who runs a Facebook page. I know many of our members have been on edge of will she come back and struggling with which way to go or engage. Tonight will end that doubt or selection process. It's over 3 months now and it will not come back in my opinion. I offered the olive branch and it was refused in somewhat spectacular fashion. by the mitochondrial Eve? Is that the way the Eve should be acting? Because if it is, it's no wonder this planet is in a mess with such non-harmonious behaviours coming from the leader of the people. People kept asking me, will Kim come back? And I said, time will tell. It has indeed. Kim will not be backing down. It is not in her current nature or being to do so. And that has hampered her in the past, and it will in the future. But that is her remit. And no longer will I be held responsible or accountable for that. In the Zoom call on Saturday, I mentioned several people I no longer engage with as a supporting role in me and THI, including Kim, because I recognise their input regardless of how things turned out. And it's the right thing to do. And I will always do the right thing of what is best for the people, often at cost to myself. So I came to a decision yesterday, given Kim and Tank's ill stance towards me, which is impacting 3 groups of people and certain other satellite groups. Tank's position in particular has gone on since the summer of 2018. And who can forget the lucid dreamer incident he was directly involved in that nearly got me arrested and then deported? Did he apologise? No. All because he wanted to be in my position, sending his lawyer to ask him to oust me and put him in my place. So with their stance, plus a few separate discussions I had in the week, where it was being stated or inferred that I am the barrier to progressing and in some way a hindrance, and that my input is no longer required. That being said, it is my wish for all members to get involved whatever they wish to do. Join whichever group you feel comfortable in. And please do not be hampered by any loyalties to me, as it's not what I stand for. And this will end the uncomfortable feeling of certain people Kim has been engaging with out of THI with divided loyalties, so there is no more need to tiptoe around. The opportunists now can have free rein. I'm stepping back and away from it all, and I will be a silent observer from the bleachers. This way I can no longer be blamed for this, that and the other, as posited by several people who engage both groups, and also end the sly jibes aimed at our show in several of their broadcasts, as I have been informed. My work and my role goes on regardless. It was not dependent on the trust or trustee, and I will carry on doing what I've always done and what is best for the people. My role was about smashing the old system, and that is by and large done now. And then the building the platform to start anew, which has also by and large been done now as well. but that is where my role ends in it according to the dictates of other people. But it was never my intention or doing to be a barrier or distraction as others now deem it as. And so it's best for me to step away accordingly and let the new kids on the block continue the discourse. Some or many will see that as not right and unjust. But is it not the case that life itself is unjust and why we have to change it? And as the trustee and responsible for all of our funds, I, like anyone else, is entitled to ask questions, however awkward, when they arise. And this should not be seen as a personal attack, because it is that type of poor response and reactions by her is to what led to the current status we have. I do not agree with apps, and I have laid that out extensively as to why. So quite why Kim and her team is deeming that as a personal attack on them is both informative and indicative of their current modus operandi. The danger is the chase for the funds overlooks certain other dangers to humanity that needs to be addressed. Corners are being cut, bad deals, and allowing them clowns back in the game when they are losing badly, and that is where I come in. There is a much bigger game playing out now and goes way beyond internet popularity games, pieces of paper with numbers on, self-importance strategies. It goes way beyond that. And it's time Kim acted accordingly to her titles of trustee, mitochondrial Eve, and the ambassador to the Universal Council. I will highlight issues as I see as a danger to humanity. I see things and know a lot more than many, and that is why Kim selected me as part of the trust to begin with. I was the number 7. And her gloating reactions of removing my security clearance in front of all the members who had loyally supported her became indicative of behaviours that followed. Under one word, vindictive. And I know this whole episode has disappointed so many of you, but by removing my energy from the situation, one is hoping it allows others to push things forward for the betterment of humanity, away from the bitching, sniping, finger-pointing and blame game that has ran rampant since May. Some of it obvious, some of it not so. So as I step away from it, I'd lay out a challenge to the Life Force UNC channels. As you have stated, you are for and by the people. Go and combine the assemblies of your channels with THI state and country groups, National Liberty Alliance state groups, and also AVR assemblies, all without signing up by apps or having to join any group. As the mitochondrial Eve, you have a duty and obligation to bring the people together, not divide them. Life Force, UNC, Anavon Rights and National Liberty Alliance are all law-based groups, essentially, and so they should be combined together with some THI members who are interested in that within it also. And THI groups can teach the other three of how we the people can go forward together, each having their own autonomy and input without the divisiveness that has largely been connected to Kim herself. Shane and Randy Morgan's departures were all to do with Kim. They targeted me only because I supported her. Look, we all make mistakes in life, and the goal is to strive to correct them, which is why many who left our group in the past under a cloud were allowed to return. Why? Because they owned up to their shit and we all moved on. Yet curiously, Kim, despite her high status, which should bring more responsibility, better reactions and demeanour, is clearly not being displayed currently, and we are seeing a very pale shadow of the Kim you all saw on the Zoom in April. It's marked. It doesn't need my input to point it out. But overreaction, wrath and antagonism should not precede every interaction that Kim does not approve of. Any question of her and she bristles and reacts badly, as Ava herself will know all too well. These should not be the trustee, the ambassador to the council, or the mitochondrial Eves-based behaviours. Based on those titles, you are here to set an example for us all, the female archetype. But you're setting the bar of standards way too low currently, and you wonder why this planet is in a mess. And that has to be urgently corrected as a matter of urgency for the betterment of humanity. With me, the scapegoat, now fully out of the way and in the background, will we see some improvement in her? Time, as always, will tell. With that all now being said, of which I could have said an awful lot more, that is my input into it now over. THI has always been about bringing people together, including some groups off the internet. Until someone or something deliberately interrupted that as well, and has left what we have now is a very divided set of groups, which only aids the clowns and the dark forces. Blatant plagiarising, harvesting and dividing groups to elevate your own is not and never will be the way forward. One hopes with this piece work will be done to correct that. And a warning and a reminder. This is our last go at this mission, Kim. Your army will not be returning next time should you fail again. But you will. THI will go on, and shows will still be coming, and I will continue to support the people privately and within the group as I have done for many years now. The business aspects, the money and the law was never my forte or calling. I'm about strategizing, building, helping and elevating the people. And the Zoom call last Saturday proved that in absolute buckets and spades. The first song is a message for all THI listeners and members alike. The second song is what needs to happen, and that lies solely on the shoulders of Kimberly and Gogoon.